All right, this is the Rollei 35. I think I called it the 35S in the other video, but it's the 35. It has your aperture ring here. You got to push this little lever in to turn it, and the numbers are on top, if you can see them. And then it's got the shutter speeds over here. The numbers are again on top. You can see them by turning. That one doesn't have a protective lever like the first aperture does. You set your film speed here on this ring. I'm not using an internal light meter. I'm just guessing the exposure when I shoot this camera, because I'm just using the Sunny 16 rule outside in normal daylight. So I typically will just, guess the exposure. If I'm shooting outside on a moderately bright day, I'll just shoot at 0.05 of a second at f8 or f11, and I know I'm probably going to get an image on the negative. The one thing about these cameras that are really great is how small they are and how cool they are. Look how cool that looks. It's a piece of art. Rollei made the smallest camera possible for a roll of 35mm film. It's almost just the width of a 35mm canister. It's a really sweet camera. To use it, you actually have to pull the lens out and turn it to engage it. So now the lens is ready to use. It's got a focus dial, but there is no in viewfinder focus confirmation. You just have to guess. So this is great for zone focusing. If you put it on 20 feet or 15 feet, you can probably shoot at f11 outside all day long without worrying about focus. The bigger worry is that you bumped it off of that 15 or 20 foot mark. But it has a little depth of field scale that tells you how much is in focus. It's not great because you don't have the ability to close focus and really guarantee that you're focusing on eyes when you're doing a portrait, but this is probably not the best portrait camera. This is probably the better street camera or general snapshot tourist camera. A trick to putting the lens back in: if you try to put it back in, it will only go in by pressing this button, and the lens has to be rotated left a little bit and pushed in, but it will only go in if the shutter is cocked and ready for another exposure. If you just took a picture and try to put it in and you're finding it won't go in, that's because they made the camera so that the lens resets into an area of the shutter, and for them to do that, they had to make an area that was clear for the lens to retract into, and that space is only available when the shutter is cocked. So if you try to push the lens back in and it won't go in, that's why. It's an odd setup. In fact, the advance is on the left side. The film goes in on this side. I would open this, except for I'll do another video once the film is out of here, but I have film in here at the moment. And here's the rewind little tab if you want to rewind the film. You take a picture and then you wind this to the left, because the film winds in from right to left in this camera, which is, again, an oddity. When you want to rewind it, this is the rewind lever, and you pull it out and you rewind it. And it won't turn right now because it has film in it. If ever you want to check and see if a camera has film in it, just try turning the rewind knob. If you haven't pushed the rewind lever, it won't turn because there's film holding it, keeping tension on it. So this one at the moment won't release, and I know that there's film in it. It also has the crazy hot shoe on the bottom, so if you were taking a picture, your flash would have to hang underneath of it, but down here, for it to have a flash. There's some great horror movie effects you can make with the flash down there. I'm not a flash guy, so it wouldn't matter to me. I wouldn't use that anyway, but if you want to use a flash, it does have a hot shoe, but of all crazy things, it's on the bottom of the camera. And there's your film counter. And this is just, I think, a little foot, if I remember. And it helps you hold the camera steady when you set it down on the ground. I'll check that. That may be something else, but I think it's just a little foot. And that's the Rollei. It's got a Tessar 40mm 3.5 lens. It's a real simple lens design. It's known for being a quality lens. It's a Rollei camera. They make really beautiful work, and it's German made most of the time. Some are made in Singapore. If you look, this one's made in Singapore. They outsource some of their production to Singapore. It doesn't matter to me. It's the same camera as far as I'm concerned. As long as it's got a quality lens, the shutters are accurate. I tested these out. They all seemed accurate. The aperture closes down when you turn the lever, and it actually is working. As long as it's working, I don't care where it's made. There's more value if you're collecting them if they're made in Germany, but I don't buy cameras to collect. I buy cameras to shoot. So it's the Rollei 35. If you find these, you'll often find them with dinged up corners. They have real soft metal up in here, and they take hits to a doorway, and when they do, they get a big old blemish on them. So you may find one that's dinged up a little bit. As long as it's working, I don't have any problem with that, but they're not as attractive as one that's not dinged up. And this one's in really nice shape. Like I said, this was a sweet deal. Somebody came by my studio and offered, said if I wanted it for $25. So I'll definitely shoot this for some street, and I'll post some pictures. And it's a great walk-around camera. It does draw a little bit of attention, and people talk about it a little bit, and that sometimes makes for some interesting pictures too. All right, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. We'll talk about them, and I look forward to maybe seeing some of your pictures and your comments, and we'll talk more cameras next time.